What is going on, crowdfunding fans? It's the brain of the mainframe, Nile Scala, here again with another fantastic episode of Crowdfunding Comics with the man, the myth, the legend, my pal, my amigo, Mr. Billy Tucci. What's up, buddy?
What's up, brother from another Italian mother? How are you, pal? How's everything going?
I am doing good. How are you doing tonight?
Dude, I'm pumped, man. We have a great guest today of someone who we fast became fans of, didn't we?
Yes,
immediately. We heard his story for Nook, and but before we go, let's say good evening, everyone. And I can't believe this, but Nile, today, all you crowdfunding centurions out there and crusaders, today is our 18th episode.
18th episode.
So thank you all for sticking with us. And now, Nile, our little show is finally an adult.
Yes, it is.
It can legally fight in a war. It can vote. It could put a scratch on my brand new car or bang it up because it can drive. But it still can't buy alcohol or tobacco in my state. How about your fair state, my friend?
Not here, but I'm sure we can find some creepy old dude to do that.
Yeah. And, well, without further ado, could we please welcome our very esteemed guest, Mr. Caleb Thusat.
Caleb, how are we doing tonight?
I'm great, guys. How are you guys?
Yeah, we're doing fantastic. We're happy you're here. We're excited about your graphic novel. Wonderful concept. Yeah, man. So we're so thrilled that you're here.
Thanks for having me, man. It's always exciting to get to talk about the stuff I've been working on, since it takes so much time and effort to make these things happen.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's what we wanted to do with this program is, as we said the last time, we have a lot of, and no offense to you, but a lot of our guests have been in the comics industry for 20-plus years that we've used. Some, Chuck Dixon, 30 years, Bo Smith, 30 years. And but as our little crowdfunding comics channel has grown, Nile and I created crowdfunding comics because we just love the concept of people creating their own books, publishing their own books, and going directly to the fans first to sell them. And I just think it's a new golden age. I think it's a wonderful idea. I think, again, the guests that we have been, a lot of really well-known names with Jimmy Palmiotti, as I said, Chuck Dixon, Bo Smith, Graham Nolan, Brian Pulido, Ethan Van Sciver. But what we found is these gems and young guys like you and gals who are putting out this astonishing content. And we're just so proud to have you. And thank you for coming on to our show, because we literally are coming to you because we're fans of yours.
Thank you, man. That's awesome to hear.
Yeah, and your book, Nook, right now, we'll get to that later. But I just want to congratulate you on this is your 10th crowdfunded book you did?
Yeah. I did 10 crowdfunding campaigns, one of them which failed. This was my 9th successful one, and I'm planning on doing another one in July. So call me crazy, but I'm just going to keep going with it.
Well, please let us know when you want to come on anytime you're on, pal.
Yeah, anything you have on, let us know. Because, yeah, like Billy's saying, we sat there in a Starbucks, and it's like, man, this stuff's great. We love this stuff. Now's the time. And there's so much talent out there, and we're fans of all these guys. So screw it. With everything out there, like this tool right here, we're just bringing you guys on. Let's chat, let's talk, let's see what you do, what you have coming up, and let's get the word out there on all you great creators.
Yeah,
awesome.
And this is your show, and what we try to do, I'm going to warn you right now, our goal is to keep this show at 45 minutes. We have to do that. But when you got to go, because Nile and I just end up talking, and we all have a lot of fun, but we go over an hour. Sometimes we go an hour and a half. I think one time with Peter Cimetti, we were on like 2.5 hours.
3 hours, yeah.
Yeah, and it was fun though. But like I said, and don't feel bad. Like you're like, guys, I got to go. I got to finish this. Please, this is your show. you get out there what you want. Talk about your project and your projects. And then when you got to go, don't feel bad, all right? Because we'll keep you on for 2-3 hours.
Hey, man, I know what I signed up for. I'm here. I'm here.
So now Nook right now had a really successful Kickstarter, and it just ended a few weeks ago. But now it's on demand on Indiegogo, and I'm sure Frank, our Frankenstein's monster,
chat master,
chat master, he'll post a link too, so people can go to the link and go to Indiegogo. But Nile, my brother, let me turn it over to you because I'm already spoken way too much.
Yeah, you have. So let's just zip that for a second. All right, now. All right, so Caleb, so when did you get into crocheting?
Crocheting?
Yeah. Isn't that what this show is about?
I have never got into crocheting. That came out of left field there.
That's weird. That's weird. Good. Frank. Yeah, no. So you're Caleb, for those that don't know, you're a writer. You're a writer. You know, a lot of the creators we do have on seem to primarily be the artists, but you're the writer of these stories. A, when did you start writing? And B, what were the first stories you started writing?
I was writing when I was in elementary school. I actually had my mom hand me something not that long ago that was like this silly sci-fi thing that I was writing, just like scratching stuff down for some goofy creative writing thing. And I was probably like in 3rd or 4th grade. But I kind of, I've always felt like that was the course of where I was going with my life with writing. Like, I went to college for filmmaking, and I focused a lot on the writing aspects of things. And it just kind of, I always felt like I had stories to tell, and it's always come back to that. And I was a producer in independent film in Chicago for about 12 years before I started to do anything with comic books. And I just felt like the stories that I had were too big to tell in such a medium that, just didn't have the outlet that I could provide. As far as I had these big science fiction stories and these big history-based stories. It's like, how am I going to bring that to indie film on a $30,000 budget? It's just very difficult. And I always loved comic books. I read graphic novels a lot, and I was just like, why don't I just take my ideas and try to write comic books instead of trying to make this some crazy screenplay that's only 90 minutes long. So that's kind of what ended up bringing me here.
Oh, very cool. Now, so you said that you started off very into comics. I mean, what age were you when you were introduced to comics? What were you reading? What was your thing?
Honestly, like, I grew up in a town that didn't even have a comic book store or anything. I was introduced by, like, my mom was really into, like, Superman when she was a kid, so she would show me some Superman stuff, and I would, I dabbled a little bit here and there, but I never really took it that seriously until I probably got into college and read some Alan Moore books, and I was like, oh, there's really something special that you can do with this medium, something far from even superheroes. And I saw this deeper level of writing going on that I wanted to kind of bring my own voice and, tell my own stories that way.
Oh, very cool. So so you said you went to school for film. If you don't mind me asking, where did you attend?
Yeah, I went to Bowling Green State University in Ohio. They had a very small film department at that point, so my studies were a lot more producer oriented. I ended up focusing a lot more on pop culture and kind of tearing apart movies and books and kind of looking at them as like cultural objects, and like, if you were looking at these things, 100 years from now, what would they say about the time that they were made in? So that kind of made me harness my skills in writing, and I brought that to my stories too.
Very cool. So anyone out there that's, let's say, like went to film school or dealt with any form of those studies, and they're looking at other mediums of, such as comic books, a monthly comic book or a graphic novel, a one-shot book. I mean, what would you, with that experience, I'm kind of curious, what would be kind of your best advice? Like, what could someone really take from film studies and bringing that over into being an author of a comic?
I mean, really, story structure would be the main thing. There's like this subtle difference in writing for a motion frame versus a single frame. Like with a comic book, you don't have that like the moving action. So I had to kind of train myself to write a slightly different way, which is really strange. But I feel like I was able to do it mainly because that's just kind of how my brain visualizes things anyway. So I never was the director. I never really took on that role. I never really did the technical aspect of things. So basically, the main thing I think you could bring over from film is how to tell a story, because I mean, you still are telling a story arc in a given time frame. Say like you're shooting for 90 minutes. Well, if you're shooting for 90 pages, then there's a similar arc going on there. You just have to, if you're doing it issue by issue, you kind of have to retool where things begin and where they end. And that was my big learning curve, was when I took my first series that I did, Alterlife, was a sci-fi. I wanted to do it as initially just as a graphic novel, but being independent, the way I dove into it with Kickstarters, like I can't really afford to just do a 200-page graphic novel with an artist. Like, being a writer, I had to pay someone a page rate to do this. So I did one by one on Kickstarter for like 2.5 years to get that book done. And I had to kind of tell myself, I need to tell this story in mini stories that make up the greater story, so that people aren't just getting left with issue 1 and getting pissed off at me because there's no definitive beginning, middle, and end. So I think that's the most challenging thing that I've come to find, is kind of reminding yourself that you have to make sure that single issue works on its own.
Now, Billy, you're no stranger to film. I mean, it's you relating to a little bit of what Caleb's bringing to the table on that?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Because and I'm so interested in going to ask you a couple of questions about screenwriting, because you do have to edit yourself, which is great, and it really makes, because you have 90 pages to tell. You know, if historically speaking, or traditionally speaking, in film, for those that may and may not know out there, they tell you that every page equals a minute of screen time. So as Caleb was saying, you need it. You know, your film is supposed to be 90 minutes. Your script has to come in at 90 pages. You'll hear stories of guys coming in with their screenplays for an hour and a half movie, and it's 255 pages of of script. And that's just not going to work. But good. And it's a great way. Film classes are a great way for people out there to learn to write comics, as well as writing scripts too, screenplay. Because right, Caleb, you learn to edit yourself. You do.
Yeah. Honestly, coming off of film, I think the best thing that I've done to challenge myself was I dove into doing short submissions for anthologies and for different things where they challenge you to you have to write a complete story in 4 pages.
Yeah.
And so that really makes you have to focus and figure out how that's going to work. And then, from there, it makes it all the easier to go, okay, well, 24 pages, that's easy to make a full arc. If you can shoot out a little story arc in 4 pages, there's no reason you shouldn't be able to expand and do a 22, 26 page, single issue from that. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, definitely starting from film, I think it could go either way. I actually was talking to somebody over at Three Rivers Comic-Con this weekend that's actually kind of doing it the other way around, where he's been a comic writer forever, and now he's trying to do scripts, and he was struggling with going the other way around, because it's suddenly stuff that works in comics doesn't work in film. So it's just that there's always these little, it's just subtle differences that you kind of have to relearn. But I think it's definitely a good place to start one way or the other to get your feet wet. So
now, who? Yeah, because another thing about that is that you'll have, and going back to the whole thing of you have, 24 pages, a lot easier, and it's great you learn to tell a story in 4 to 6 pages if you can. And I love doing the DC anthology stuff that I do, that, either 8 pages, 2 pages, 12 pages, 6 pages, just to tell a story. And I love doing those. But you see a lot that happens in comics today, and I think a lot of the fatigue that's going on in mainstream comics, for the most part, is not everyone, of course, but there are a lot of writers out there who, what Stan Lee and Jack Kirby would tell in 1 issue, they're taking 8, 10 issues to tell. You know what I mean? And, And
I think that's like I honestly feel like that's something that's just part of the media culture that we're starting to live in. Like, there's even TV shows and things. It's just like, do we need these extra 12 episodes? Like, the difference between these TV shows they bring from BBC that are 6 episodes and they're refined and everything works on all cylinders, and then you got American shows that are like 24 episodes long. It's like, what story are we telling here? Like, it just gets kind of convoluted at that point.
Now, I'm sure you've worked especially in your film scripts, you use, Scriptwriter Pro or Final Draft. Do you use that for your comic book script writing, or do you go to like Word or something like that?
This is the funniest thing. I used to feel like I needed to I used like Movie Magic Screenwriter or whatever back in the day when I was doing scripts. And like when I started doing comic books, like most recently now, I just pull up the friggin' notepad on Apple and just do it that way, because it's like it's not that complicated to just be like, the formatting does not matter as long as you're consistent, and so that your artist can come in and like see exactly what they need to see. So I just try to make it clear and concise, and I try not to worry so much about formatting. I think people get sidetracked by silly things like that, and that kind of bogs them down when it comes to working on their actual ideas. So I just kind of try to throw that stuff aside and focus on just writing a good story.
Nice. Yeah, I that's what I did. When I got into it, when the scriptwriter programs came out, and I think Bo Smith writes in that. I think a couple of guys do write in like Final Draft, and I bought Final Draft. I have it and all, but I just go with Word, Microsoft Word. I write my script and bang, hit some tabs, and it's just so much quicker. So now let's get into your different projects that you funded with your various, through crowdfunding. And again, you mentioned Alter Life. I mean, Nile and I talked about this, and he's got a question. I think great title, but what can you tell everyone out there about it?
Yeah, I'll give you my elevator pitch. It's a series about a guy that discovers that when he dies, he jumps into an alternate version of himself. So I usually sell it kind of as Groundhog Day if it was written as a Black Mirror episode.
Nice. All right.
So it's dark sci-fi with this very relatable character. It really came from a place of me being stuck in a data entry job for like 9 years of my life, and this story of trying to break out of this cycle came out of that, and also from some crazy weird ideas that I had when I was abroad in my college days. I had this vision of, what if you die and your consciousness just jumps into another one of your realities versus just being gone. So I just kind of stuff that I've been kind of simmering on for a long time, and that just came together the right way. And I feel like it struck a chord with people, because that was my first book to throw up on Kickstarter, and it funded. So, and I kind of just didn't look back from there.
Well, it's kind of like, it is a thought people have. I've actually had that thought, like, man, what happens when you die, right? So do you just jump into like another alternate reality of yourself or what have you? So, I love the concept of it, because I'm a big, I always think like sometimes you ever have those like really weird dreams that seem so real. and you are you, but you're in a circumstance that like you're hoping you wake up, and it's like, wow, am I living, you know, Nile in Dimension 38? Like, you know, it's just so real. And then you're kind of like,
funny.
What the fuck? What the heck
And
just
that
happened?
and then that Nile has a nightmare of him jumping into Nile Scholar 7, where we are here, and you're sitting there with just Tucci guy that's just keeps screaming into the microphone.
Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned dreams, because originally when I was writing that concept, it was being written as a screenplay with something to do with dreams.
Mm-hmm.
And then I saw Inception and I scrapped my screenplay because I was basically like, that's the story that I was going to write. So I'm just going to do something else with
Isn't that incredible, though, how you can literally be creating something and then something comes out and it's like, that's what I'm working on. Like somewhere in this universe, you have now clicked with someone, not even realizing it.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I mean, and the concept of having an alternative timeline, you know, and going back to investigate your own life is just incredibly fascinating. Mm-hmm. So what made you decide to take that comic in that direction, that being your first comic?
You know, I was crazy, honestly, because now that I look back at it, I should have started with Nook, because this was a much better entry point for me. As far as relating with people, and it just grabs people's attention at shows and stuff too. So, but yeah, I don't know. I think it was just because I was still stuck in that job at the point of writing it that I was just like, I need to tell this story. And the craziest thing about this story is when I was running the Kickstarter, the day that it was over and I funded like on the last day. It was like when it was down to the wire. I got a phone call from my boss, and they let me go from that job on the exact day that I funded and finished the Kickstarter. So I just kind of took that as like a sign at the moment. I was like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Like, I need to just dive into this and write comic books, because the universe is trying to tell me something.
Yeah.
So
you left one reality and jumped to your new reality.
I think so. Very strange.
That's cool.
You can't even make that up. That's.
So then you also have another project called Zed. I love the genre that it falls into. A buddy road trip zombie superhero comic. What made you take this zombies genre in this way? I've never even like heard of anything like this. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, there's two things actually. The reason I even started that book was because of Alter Life. I needed something that was like the polar opposite to be writing, and that was kind of like my therapy with dealing with this dark thing that was so rooted in my own personal life that I just wanted to do something that was completely out of the box. So I did that kind of on the side, and I was writing a couple issues of that. And I love the zombie genre, and I just felt like with The Walking Dead and all that stuff going on, we got so serious, and I wanted something more fun to be injected into something like that. So I don't really like writing superhero stuff as much. So there's like tropes that are in there of the superhero, because he has to hide himself because he's left as part infected, and he starts kind of using it as an ability in its own right. But I just wanted to do something completely out of the box and different with the concept. And I feel like when I actually do explain to people that, you know, it's a zombie book, but it's, you know, a buddy road trip zombie superhero book, they're like, what the hell is that? And they usually like have to buy it. So I don't know. It's one of those weird things that just came out of having to like remove myself from that dark other story that I was writing.
Oh, nice.
That's cool.
Bring you
cool.
to the light a little bit, right? So we discussed before.
Do they have a car? Is there a particular car, like a Panama?
There is. Zed was a former ice delivery man, and they drive around in an ice truck because they can store body parts and all that stuff in the back, so that if he needs like a new arm, they can just go in the back of the truck and zip a new one on him. So
that's awesome. It's such a great concept. Bring that one to film. Bring that one to film. That'll be a good time.
That would be fun.
Right? So you and I, while we were on, we do our little sound check thing. We get everyone set, and we were just talking. And you're a fan, obviously, of movies and stuff. I mean, so in the zombie genre, I mean, what are your favorite zombie films?
I love the original Dawn of the Dead is probably my go-to favorite. I just feel like it's goofy and fun, but it still has that seriousness that Romero played with people returning to the place that they're familiar with the mall and everything. And I like being able to still have that underlying meaning. That's part of the pop culture nerd coming out of me with all the stuff that I had studied in school. It's like, I want there to be something to read into. I don't want it to just be this flat, fun story. That's fun, but I also like there to be some subtext there that, it gives you a reason to come back and read that story again. So, Dawn of the Dead, I mean, I love like Zombieland. It kind of has a feel of Zombieland at points with the humor in it. Even the Dawn of the Dead remake was fun, but like, I mean, he was basically just stealing all the same ideas and doing the same thing with it, but it's still fun. And I think the biggest one outside of that is 28 Days Later. Like that and the sequel to that, I love those movies. And it's, again, there's all the subtext going on within the story. And I don't know, that's the things I thrive on when I watch a movie. So.
Now we know that you've with Zed, he's dead, right? He's a reanimated, he's a dead zombie. Do you prefer dead zombies or like infected live people who become zombies, a la 28 Days Later, compared to Dawn of the Dead?
I like the terror that the quicker live on like the living undead are, quote unquote. Yeah, the silliness of like the old school Dawn of the Dead has there's points where you're like, really, gets kind of goofy, but I don't mind that. Like, I feel like it makes sense for what he wrote. But I do like the terror of like the unpredictability of how fast those creatures are in like 28 Days Later. Because that's one of those movies that when I first saw it, I didn't know what I was getting into. You just because no one really knew about what they were seeing with that movie. It was just kind of came out of nowhere, and you're like, holy, that's terrifying. Like, it was seriously terrifying. But yeah, I don't think I ever really had that feeling with the old Romero movies.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So where do you see like like the genre's kind of taken over. There's so many zombie shows and things going on. I mean, what's your take on, the zombie genre going forward?
I'm fatigued. I gave up on Walking Dead a couple of years ago at this point. I don't know. I feel like it'll go through a point where people are going to be tired of it, and then it'll have a rebirth again. But honestly, like, it's been like over a decade with Walking Dead now, just about. It's like, I feel like that the serious tone of that has kind of run its course. I feel like if people can bring it somewhere else, the people that are following Walking Dead might flock there. Like if Zed got a TV show or something, hey, that would be.
Did you hear that, Netflix?
But yeah, I think there's always going to be it's just like the vampire genre. Like, there's always going to be people that are obsessed with it. But I feel like that big giant boom that was Walking Dead's first like 3 or 4 seasons, that's obviously has gone away to some extent at this point because they've lost so many numbers. But I hope it sticks around because there's still cool things that you can do with it. I think it just needs to be refreshed at this point.
Yeah, I think like a show like Perfect Strangers, but one of them as a zombie would be really good. I think someone should bring that back. Maybe someone wants to work on that script.
It's
from a foreign country.
You know which one I loved? Quarantine. If you
Oh,
guys
yeah.
Oh yeah.
I love that. Yeah, I love that first person camera thing. I know a lot of people hate it. My wife can't even watch it. With the cat, it just
Yeah, my
drives her.
wife knew that she can't watch it. She gets sick.
Yeah, but I love those. I just thought and I know it's an Italian film, I think, or a Spanish film, the original one. But I love that. So that movie scared the hell out of me. Just
Nice.
Yeah.
so. All right, well, let's get back. Let's go to your most recent book, Nook. And what can you tell us about Nook that now is available on Indiegogo, in the in-demand part? So if you missed a Kickstarter, you can go right to Indiegogo, and you guys can still pledge to this and get our hands on it, because I want you to tell it, because I think it's wonderful. So.
All right, yeah. Let me tell you the little pitch again. It's a story set during World War II. The family moves from Germany right before the war begins, and they move to this house on the border of France that's haunted by this little ghost cat that starts to kind of reveal the history of the house to their little daughter. It very much in the perspective of the innocent girl's eyes seeing the war, and kind of a little bit of the perspective of the ghost itself, and very much inspired by Guillermo del Toro and Neil Gaiman, of course. It is an inspiration for multiple stories of mine, but yeah, it came from a culmination of things. I had some really demented dreams a few years ago that actually fed really well into this story. One of them of which was me and my wife being shown a house that had this little carriage house attached to it that had this little cubby like door that I don't know if it was for storage or something off the carriage house. And they were like, oh yeah, well, we're supposed to disclose to the people buying that a little girl got locked in there and died.
Wow.
So and this is like a dream. Like, I don't know where this comes from, but so I wrote that down, and I was like, that something needs to be done with that at some point. And I came back to it eventually, and it was one of those things that kept playing back in my head, and I started to kind of piece together pieces of my family history. Some of my family on my father's side actually escaped Germany like during World War II and moved to America. Some of them got stuck over there and were forced to either fight or stay in prison. So yeah, like I kind of just like took these strange pieces and put them together. There was a couple other dreams that I wrote stuff down from ghosts and weird ghosts that I dreamt about, and I was like, I'm just going to try to piece that in somewhere, and it all just made sense to me eventually. But really, the story itself came from my love of stories like Pan's Labyrinth and Crimson Peak, where the ghost is a part of the story, but it's not really the horror that the story is being told. The horror is the setting, and the horror is what happens to the actual people in the story versus what has already happened to these ghosts that are being tormented. And I love stories that can kind of be scary without like the jump scare. And this is scary because this is set in a world that actually happened. Like this horrifying stuff that happens to these people actually happened to people. Not like these people are not real that I wrote, but this very well could have happened to these people. And it's both told during World War II, and if you read on into part 2 and 3 of Nook, it goes back to World War I and kind of shows you this horrible cycle of repetition and death that we tend to live in as humans. So I kind of wanted to make a story that showed this cyclical nature of humanity, and I hope that I was able to do it with this book. So,
so if you don't mind, and Billy, if you don't mind, if you want to ask your question for me, I'd like to play the video that Caleb has up on Indiegogo.
Yeah.
All right. So for our guests and us, we can't hear the video, but for you guys, you can. So I'll play this up here. So Caleb, tell me a little bit about the artist that you chose for this book, because I really do love the style of his work. I think it complements the story, and he really grasps like a simplistic, ghostly past. You know, just I love his style. Can you tell us a little about who the artist is and why you chose him?
Yeah. His name's Marcelo Biot. He's a guy I got to know while I was living in Chicago. We had never worked together on anything, but kind of in passing, I threw him this idea of this project after he had done a couple variant covers and stuff for me in the past for Alter Life and stuff. He's done I think he did a pinup and a variant cover at one point. And I really liked what he brought to the table with that. So I was like, let's see if this is something he'd be interested in. He normally does, I think his webcomic is called Infra City, and it's very like Power Rangers feeling. Like it's nothing, he's never done really anything like this before. And I think he just wanted to do something that would challenge him as an artist. And so he accepted this, and we did a few pages over I have a Patreon page that, it was raising just enough to pump out like a page or two of this comic book a month for about a year. And so we just kind of dabbled with it and just kind of played with character designs and stuff. And then once he nailed it for me, I was like, let's just go ahead and do a couple pages and see where it goes. And I don't know, like he captures this crazy innocent perspective at the same time. Like it's very creepy and dark. And I always get compliments on the artwork, and I'm like, I don't know where it came from, because he doesn't do stuff like this. This is not his wheelhouse. Like he doesn't do, it's all more Power Rangers superhero type stuff. So the fact that he even accepted it was awesome. But then that he kind of took it to this other level that I never really expected to go. It's been fantastic. And you'll see in the part 2 and 3, it's just, I let him kind of have some freedom. I like to, when I work with my artists, I like to tell them to just, if you see something that I don't see, don't feel like you need to stick to those squares that I told you to draw in, like draw something else and show it to me. So, and you see in the full page spreads and stuff that he's done, even in part 1, that there's some really cool artwork that's come out of letting him have that freedom. So I think that's very important to do. And I think maybe part of that has come from my film background too, is I want it to be a collaborative thing. Film is very frustrating because it's too collaborative at times, and you have like 20 people trying to put their own vision inside this one box. But with it just being my voice and his pen, like I felt like, just show me what you have and let's figure out what tells the story the best way. And I think he's just gone above and beyond what I could ever have expected.
Yeah. Now, with your script that you wrote out for this, I mean, obviously you wrote this first and then gave it to him, or how did you break this down for him to panel and do everything?
Yeah, I wrote, I did like a overall story arc initially that kind of told the, the part 1, 2, and 3, and then that's kind of how I write, and then I'll go in and dig into part 1, and then I think I only gave him like the first half of the first part that I wrote, and he was just like, I need to do this book, like something about it struck a chord with him. And I think honestly it had something to do with like the times that we're living in now too, kind of being reflected in this story, which was not really intended when I wrote it, but I mean, it's also a story about history repeating itself, so it's bound to happen. So the fact that it happened while I was writing it was just kind of dumb luck, I guess. Not really luck, but it's meant to be, I guess. So
very cool.
It's so interesting that we're talking. My cat came up and she's hanging out.
I saw that too. I'm like, it's Nook.
Yes, if I lowered a little bit, I can, and she's. I think she wants to hear this too. Sorry, Sophie, come here. Sophie, come here. She's just hanging out on my desk. Too. Yeah, come here, Sophie. Come here.
Now, Caleb, do you have a cat?
I have 2 cats. That's one of the reasons I have another story. Actually, the other Kickstarter I'm working on later this summer is a superhero cat kids book, because I have a son that's turning 2 this summer, and I want a book that I can read with him. So I'm writing a little kids book. But yeah, I'm obsessed with the mannerisms and you can't read cats all the time. You never really know what they're thinking. Sometimes they do stuff that just you would never expect them to do.
That's the point. But she comes up when she's hungry, but she just ate. Now she just, I guess, wants to hang out and listen.
Yeah, she just wants to know a little more about Nook.
Yeah. Well, okay. So you have again, that you said this in World War II when you was talking about reflecting of the times today and stuff. And I'm a World War II fanatic. I'm a World War II history buff. What drew you to that time period to put Nook in? Aside from the obvious with the Nazis, or is it just the obvious? Like, are you a World War II fan, or you just? I
am a pretty big World War II fan. I wouldn't say I know the history perfectly, but I've always been obsessed with stories set during World War II, books and movies and television and everything. And I just feel like it's the personification of what a villain really is. And I felt like having that stark terror to inject it into the story made sense. And again, I like to have the subtext, so I felt like putting it in that time and having it kind of tell a story, since I wanted it to be like this cyclical storyline, that this house's history is based in World War I, which kind of fed into World War II. So I felt like it just worked right for the characters and the setting that I was trying to portray. I don't really know how else I would have told it. It would have been a completely different book had I not told it in that time period.
Well, it's a brilliant concept. It really is. And one thing I was wondering was, oh God, the cat just made me break my train of thought for a second. Hang on, give me a second. And it's gone. Yeah, I know, right? Let's see. Hang on, give me a second, because it was important too. It was a good question that I wanted to ask you. Darn it! Oh, when you work with these great artists on these, you have 3 different comics, right? Well, you have 3 different comics in 3 incredibly diverse genres. 2 questions. One, is it easy? Is it easy to transition from one to the other while working on all 3 of these, or do you have to basically zero in on one and you throw everything into one, or can you work on one for a few days and then move on, from Nook to Alter Life? Like, how do you do that? Because I
try to do it in pieces. I try to, like, if I'm going to work on Nook, I will like, if I'm going to work on part 2 of Nook, I will sit down and just work on part 2 of Nook until I basically have it finished. I don't really try to write like Zed while I'm writing Nook. It's just, I feel like my mind is too involved in that world, and I like to keep it there. And I tend to come up with ideas that for that book, like, you know, when I'm not thinking about it sometimes too. So, I mean, there are points that maybe I come into a part of like writing Nook where I get stuck, and then I'm like, well, I guess I'll go try to write Zed for a little bit and see if I can get something done there. And sometimes that helps spark something back in, like, my subconscious is still working on that other book. So I try to kind of focus my efforts and stay on one project at a time, but there's definitely times where it bleeds over. You can't really help it. As a writer, I try to say that writer's block is not really a thing. You just write something else instead, and then you come back to that point where you were stuck. I just have too many other ideas sitting on paper that could be, you know, I could write something there, and then it, you know, oh, that idea would work better, you know, in Nook, where my mind was like 2 days ago. So yeah, it's a strange thing. You'd think that you would. When I did Alter Life, I solely focused on that because it was one of these stories that kind of like folded in on itself, and with the timelines, and it like jumps back into previous events in like the early issues and stuff during the books. And I was just like, I don't want to mess this up. I want people to read it and for everything to make sense, so that even when you come back and like pick it apart, like there's not going to be a point where you're like, oh, that just doesn't make any sense. So I'm pretty sure I just fully focused on writing those 5 issues like straight, and then I went on to doing Zed and moved on from there. But yeah, now that I'm a little more comfortable with it, I feel like I can kind of sometimes jump from one to the other, but I still tend to try to focus on one at a time.
That's some good discipline. I wish I could do that. I jump all over. I have so many unfinished things.
How old are you?
How old am I?
Yeah.
36.
Are you really?
Yeah.
He doesn't have a line in his face, Scala. Look at that.
I know.
I don't think you live in the Northeast, do you? Where do you live?
I live in Ohio.
Oh, yes, he lives in Ohio. See, that's a good state. We pay. I bet we get killed with taxes, and we get stressed out about it. And bitch, I'm Nile. Nile's in Connecticut. I'm in New York. Yeah. Oh, I think you're like 24. Like I said. Oh. So good for you.
Thank you. Now I'll take that as a compliment.
Yeah. That we've been asked, and you should take. Yeah. No, you look great. So God bless. God love you. When you start a new project, say you're starting a new project and you don't have the funds for it, you know, you haven't done it yet. Do you when you bring an artist on, do you give him a part ownership of that property? You know what I mean? Or how do you work it that you can get them to do something for you? And this is because I get time like
I love sharing stuff like this. Let's see. So when I first started, I had money in my pocket from residuals from a movie that I worked on. It was like the only movie I really made money on, and I dumped that into doing like a chunk of pages for Alter Life and like some conceptual art and stuff. And then I just took it to Kickstarter, and I crossed my fingers and just pitched the hell out of it and hoped that it would connect with people, and it worked. I try to just do it that way. Like I don't usually get into the ownership stuff. I try to just pay a living wage to an artist because especially my artist that worked on Alter Life and Zed, she is a freelance artist. Like that's what she does full time. Yeah. So to ask her to do anything else, even if it was like, oh, you get like $1,000 and then a percentage on the back end, I just felt like that wasn't fair to her. So to me, it's better, and for her, it's better if I just pay her for the pages and I do the work to sell the book, and I make my money that way. So, and it's been a long process to get there, but I finally feel like I'm at the point where I'm able to pay for these books and actually start making money on these books, without necessarily having to dip as much into the crowdfunding as I do. It's definitely become easier. Like, I'm at the point now, I usually have most of my artwork paid for up front, and I'm just paying for the print job. Ultralife, I was paying for everything through the Kickstarters, and that was, I mean, I'm trying to raise $5,000 for an issue and then another issue, and then it's like it got very difficult. And it was nice that I had committed fans that were willing to throw money into it. But, there comes a point where you're like, how many times do I want to come back to that well? So, I feel like I'm finally there, though, where it's like I can kind of say, hey, you're only paying to get this book because I need it printed. So, it's kind of a different way of using Kickstarter, I guess. The way I'm doing it now, but I have always tried to be upfront with the artists and give them as much as I can I ask them what's reasonable for you to work on a page. So I build the Kickstarters around what they need, and then if it doesn't work, then maybe this idea wasn't good enough, and I'll just do something else. So that's kind of how I view it.
Great attitude.
Yeah, it is.
It really is.
Thanks.
Yeah. So, all right, Nile, you want to talk about some of our these newer websites that are out there?
Yeah. So you're on now. I'm noticing a lot of more people doing this now. You're on Patreon.
I am.
You are on Patreon, and we'll put a link to your Patreon in the description of the show after we're done airing. Tell us a bit of your thoughts with Patreon, your experience with Patreon, and maybe some pros and cons for other artists and creators that are watching and will watch this video on YouTube.
Yeah. Honestly, I wish I had more time to invest in it. It definitely takes a lot more effort to focus on that platform because people. I mean, you're basically asking people to subscribe to content monthly. So if I'm not putting out anything, I feel like I'm doing a disservice to people. So I try to basically give everything that I make as something that you can get for, well, quote unquote, free for subscribing. So even if you put in like $1, you're getting the digital comics and stuff that I release. I feel like if they're good enough and you like them enough, you might come buy the physicals too. But it's a strange thing. I feel like it's a lot harder to get traction on that platform. Maybe just because comic books are a different breed, and like on Kickstarter, it kind of already has that fan base, and it's kind of become, a distribution center. In a way for indie comics. Patreon, I feel like the people that really do good on Patreon are like cosplayers that are constantly doing videos and showing like how to do the how-tos and stuff. If you have stuff that's like how to do something, and like I could do that. I guess I could technically sit here and talk about how to do Kickstarters. I've done 9 of the successful ones now, but I feel like I'm not that guy. Like, I want to make comic books. I don't want to spend every other day talking about how to fund them. It's just, I don't mind doing that like on shows or going to panels and stuff and doing that. But to make that like consistently my daily job to like tell you how to do Kickstarters, it just seems daunting to me. So my Kickstarter or my Patreon is basically like you get any conceptuals, you get like access to conceptual artwork, you get access to my digital stuff, you get, you can ask me about, ask me questions, or, if you want me to do a video that's about a specific topic, I would be willing to do that too. I honestly have not had a lot of time to commit to it, so it doesn't pull in a lot of money for me, but it still does pull in enough for me to like do a page or two of something every month. So at least I'm still giving people something for their money. But it's very difficult. I feel like it's definitely it works better for people that have like a lot of content, or if you had like a bunch of content already made that you could just release slowly, or like have on the Patreons for people to access for $5 a month or something. That would make sense. It's definitely hard for someone like a comic writer to have a Patreon that's like super successful.
Yeah. So would you recommend it for other creators out there?
I would recommend it if you're willing to put in the time as an artist. I could see it being worth a while. I know a number of artists that do it, and they'll do like quick sketches and stuff every month that people can get for, you know, putting in $5 or $10. I mean, if you have the willpower to do that much work on top of whatever else you're doing, I would say go for it.
Yeah.
If you have the time. It's my problem is I have a almost 2-year-old son, and I'm trying to pump out a book every, 3 to 6 months, and it's like between that and watching my kid, it's like people don't realize, people that don't have kids don't realize how much time it takes to take care of a kid.
Right, Nile?
I have twin boys, 9 months old. I know.
Where were you? Partying around, driving around and stuff, Nile, today? You were doing stuff?
Oh, yeah. 9-month visit at the doctor's. Twin boys that love to crawl and all that stuff at the doctor's by yourself. It's fantastic.
Oh, man, yeah.
But
I can't imagine that.
I love them. They're fun.
Well, now, what we also heard about you from people is that you're also, I mean, you're a very generous person. I mean, you're very genuine, obviously, but you're also very generous. Now, you've created 10 crowdfunding projects, 9 of which were successful. But is it true that you've backed over 100 projects yourself?
I try to back as much as I can. I don't usually have a lot of money to spare, but, if I have 10, 20 bucks here and there that can go to people's digitals, I'll throw it on there and promote it, or if I can't do that, usually if I'm doing a newsletter to my mailing list, or just shout outs for their stuff on my Facebook, or whatever I can do to help, because I was there. Like, these people that are doing their first issues and they're struggling to get, $2,000 to make their book. I'm like, just come on and help them already. Like, these other guys are raising, $100,000 because they have a name that people recognize. And it's like, I like to try to remember where I was 3.5 years ago, because it's like, it was very difficult to get that first book off the ground, and you don't know what you're doing, and you don't know how everything works. And I tell people that I talk to, if you have questions about Kickstarter, just ask me. If I have time, I'll answer them. Like, unless like I have my kid screaming in my ear and I can't deal with it right that minute, I'll usually get back to you at some point with the information. So
now, will you even throw a little money if like it's a bad book? Like, have you actually ever considered that? Like, you looked at a project, this is this person's first Kickstarter, but that's really not that good of a project.
No, I would say no. If it looks god awful, I probably won't throw money into it. I might send them a message and be like, hey, if you're struggling with something, if you want help to build your page or something, there's people out there to help you. But I don't know. There's a lot of good stuff on Kickstarter that people don't see, and I try to look every once in a while. I know I'm not very good at looking when I'm not doing something on there usually, but now that I'm following enough people on Kickstarter, like, I get the messages when people launch a campaign, so I usually try to at least pop on there and check it out and see if it's like something I'd be willing to buy the physical copy of or something. Because I'm a physical copy guy. I don't read digital stuff. Like sometimes I'll back on digital, but I'm more than likely I will never read it because it just gets lost in the mix of everything else in my life. So I tend to like to have a stack of a bunch of books to go through. So if I really like what I'm seeing, I'll usually try to like throw 10 or 15 bucks in to get a physical copy. So I don't know.
And it is important for creators to back other creators. It really is. I mean, it is a business, and in a sense, we are competitors even. But but if you can out there, help your fellow creators, give them a little something, even if it's $5, even if it's just a share. If you can't, I mean, we can all use it. Everyone can use it. And it really is a great creative community. And it is a business. And people want to fulfill their dreams. And again, if you guys can't back something, I know how it gets, and share it.
There's a couple of things going off of that I've learned over my years. When I first did the Kickstarters, I got frustrated with the big names, people getting a bunch of money on Kickstarter. But now that I've done it for so long at this point, you realize that anybody that's reading comic books that's drawn to Kickstarter, it's worth having them on here because so, if somebody's making $200,000 for their comic book, that's fine because how many people are looking at Kickstarter because of that person? Yeah. And they're seeing that Kickstarter is like a valid place to buy comic books. So it's definitely, it doesn't hurt anybody to share a project, just like, even if it's just one time on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or whatever, it's like, it doesn't hurt. Even if you're not going to buy the book or you don't really like the concept or something, it's like, I usually, if someone reaches out to me and like, hey, can you share my book? I'm like, yeah, I can push share on Facebook. It takes me like half a second to do it. I mean, it's not really hurting me to do that. So I don't know. There's a lot of people, there's some people that I know that also will not do that. And it's very frustrating, but it's, I don't know. I always,
when you call favors into your friends and they ignore you.
Yeah.
Not talking to anyone in particular.
Well, if you pay better, I'll do it. But I mean, what are you going to
do? All right, then. Bye, George. Well, Nile, our illustrious guest here, apparently seems to do a lot of things right.
He does. So there's got to be some things wrong. I mean, 9 successful Kickstarters. I mean, there has to have been some mistakes, even on the successful one. Something that you're like, man, if I could tell you to do, don't do one thing, don't do this. And what is that?
Don't just launch your Kickstarter out of nowhere. I see this happen, and I see it happen every week with campaigns. There's people that are like, oh, I think I'm gonna launch a Kickstarter like next week. No, don't. You gotta plan. I've come to find that the best thing that I've done for my Kickstarters is pre-campaigning them. So I'll put a preview of my link up for like a month before I launch my campaign.
Oh, you let you let public see that, like a public. Like, oh, okay.
Which is actually, that's great advice. That's something so far out of 18 episodes and a few little test episodes we keep aired, no one's actually mentioned that.
Yeah, I'm going to write that down, actually.
It's a great tool because you can take that preview link and you can, like, I have my own domains and stuff, so I just link it to that. Mm-hmm. So when I had nookcomic.com, it was originally shooting you to the preview of my campaign for like a month. I was basically on there, I would say, tell me what you like about the campaign. Tell me what you want in the campaign. And it gave people time to look at it and say, well, what about this as a reward? Mm-hmm. Or it just gives people a chance to like be part of the campaign even more. And people that's what this is all about. Like they want everyone to feel like they're contributing to the creative process of it. And on the trade of Nook, 30% of my funding came from people clicking on the preview link of my campaign.
Wow.
And it was over $10,000 funded. So if that tells you anything about that pre-campaigning thing, this is my thing that I'm telling everybody now, especially after the past, because the one I did before it was my second issue of Zed, and I did not do the pre-campaigning hard like I did for this one.
Mm-hmm.
And I struggled with that after doing like 7 campaigns. That was my 8th one, and I struggled to get it funded because I had not let people know. If you can get people to like commit to that day one, that's what I focus on. It's like, okay, well, I'm going to launch on, I've set the date, and I'm like, it's going to be July 14th, that's going to be the day. And I just keep telling people, that's going to be the day. Come look at the page. Tell me what you think about it. Tell me what you like. Tell me what you don't like. Leave comments. But that's the day. And then I guarantee you're going to get like 40 or 50 backers on that first day. And that's happened every time that I've pushed it that hard for the pre-campaigning. It's worked for me. And it's definitely something I think nobody really thinks about, because they think that preview link is just something to share with like an editor or somebody like a friend of yours that wants to maybe give you critiques or something. Just share it. There's no shame in it. Just it'll help you build the page better. I've had super backers be like, well, don't put that up you should put your images and stuff up higher so that like people see that first. Or, it's like they're giving me advice that I might not have thought of because I just let them look at it. Beforehand. So that would be my number one thing to tell people. It's something that you're probably never going to think of. Just share it before it's time to share it.
Well, he's answered the next 3 questions pretty much, I think, Nile.
I know. I mean, he's what he's done right. I mean, everything.
Yeah. Caleb, where are we with Nook now? Where is Nook now?
Nook is printing right now.
Wow.
I have all of the rewards here except the books. So I use a printer in China, and I use them for my Alter Life hardcover last year. So they're very reliable, very good. The quality is excellent. I've always had people stop and go, "This is an indie book? Like, this is your first book? There's no way. Like, how did you get it to look this way?" So it's going to be a gorgeous book, and I can't wait to have it and send it to people. But yeah, it's printing right now. Everything has been approved all around the boards, all the rewards and everything. So I should have them. I'm gonna have some express mailed so I can have them at my Chicago show that I'm doing, Comic-Con Revolution in Chicago at the beginning of June.
I'll see you there, buddy. I'll be there too.
Yeah, so I'm gonna have like probably a very small amount of those books on hand for that show, because it costs a crap load of money to express mail from China. But I'm gonna get enough so at least I have some, because it's gonna be me and Marcelo at the table for that weekend. So, and then we'll get the big shipment probably either late June, early July, and everything will be out to backers.
Very good. Now, where can people buy, if they haven't backed it, where can they buy this book, Nook, and all your other books? So
you can get, they have that Indiegogo demand thing going on, where you can get it just off of nookcomic.com, sends you to the link. You can also just go to villagecomicbooks.com, which is my website, and everything is on there as well. You can get all the hardcover, the floppies, though I am completely sold out of Nook Part 1 now as of this weekend. So that book is essentially gone until we have the trade. But you can still get everything digital, and I have a few copies of Zed left, and I have a lot of Alter Lives. So if you're interested in that book, it's definitely one to check out.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to picking them up myself. I just think just really impressed. I got to tell you, really impressed. I mean,
Thanks, man.
Sound like wonderful ideas. And
Thank you. It's fun, man, Billy. It's so much fun meeting all these great creators, especially on the crowdfunding. I mean, what you guys are doing is just, it's a new wave, my friends. This is the time to create. I mean, all the tools are right here for us. I mean, it just takes some imagination, you know, some commitment, and really just the guts to just go for it. And it's so cool to see, you know, all these successful creators going and growing, you know, because your Kickstarters, your Indiegogos, I mean, they all seem to be getting better and better. You know, you may have one that's not as good, but then, you know, you're still going up, and then keep going and going and going. You know, it's great. Yeah. It's an inspiration to a lot of people out there that want to do this.
I mean, there's nothing easy about it. The other thing I would tell people is it's a long game. Don't go into it thinking that you're going to be working on a book for a year and you're going to be a success, because that's like 1 in a million that's going to happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like it's definitely I've gotten to the point where it just feels right. And I mean, I wouldn't be here without Kickstarter. Like the tool of crowdfunding is fantastic, and I would have never been able to afford making comic books any other way.
Yeah, you know what's fun about it is that you are able to go directly to the fans first, and if you do choose to go through Diamond Comic Distributors and get it in comic shops, then you can do that. And what's also cool, I think, for us indie publishers is that we're going up against competition with the big 2, big 3, big 4, is that we could also offer guaranteed shipping, because your book's already done by the time it gets to them. So that gives you an edge. And I would tell anyone out there that if you have these crowdfunded books and you get to meet or give Diamond a call, get a Diamond rep, get your books in comic shops all across the United States, Canada, Great Britain, Europe, is to offer a guaranteed ship date. And you tell your rep, so it's in there, that this book will be, you know, in stores on so-and-so date. And if not, you know, it's returnable or something like that. And that can give you a nice slight edge or make you more competitive with the big guys, you know, because the book's already done, because those fans went out there and they were able to
funded it.
Reality. Yeah. And it's a great connection with the fans. I just, again, you know, we started this because we were just fascinated by this idea, and people thank us for having this website. But man, right, Nile? Look at these great friends we're making now, and learning about these books and stuff.
Oh, I know. It's just that you're opening up a whole world of just what people can do and achieve. I mean, it's wonderful. I mean, you can't beat it. And you know what's the single best part about this entire process is it's personal. Yeah. Your fans, the fans of Caleb's and his books, are personal. You let them have a say in the crowdfunding process. You let them have a say in what's going to be on the campaign. What kind of, sounds like you may even they give you input on rewards and things you have. I mean, you look at the big guys. I'll throw Brian Polito out there. I mean, you watch what he does. The man's a showman. He also has a very good product. But what he does is he makes it personal. You guys are opening up. And Billy yourself, you're opening it up for the fans. So instead of just waiting for something to come out, you're interacting with them in this wonderful internet we have that allows the world to be so small that, you know, your fans can just interact with you. They can message you on Facebook. They can partake in this, partake in that. I mean, that is the key, I think, of crowdfunding. I think that is the true key, is how personal it is. They feel like they're a part of this journey with you.
And we did do that, guys like Brian Polito and I. We did go forward, and we let everyone know how much appreciative we were. You know, that thank you guys, you know, people thank you for signing a book. Like, no, thank you. You changed my life. Mm-hmm. Now this is, and, you know, we lucked out, Brian and I, you know, Jeff Smith, you know, Terry Moore. I mean, but they had, you know, great properties too. I mean, it's got to be good. But then, you know, to be able to catch lightning in a bottle and to be accepted and to be thrust, you know, onto this, you know, center stage of comics. But, you know, but it's so hard now to do that because of the way comic sales are, and with the domination of the big 2 with all their events and the you know, that they're exclusive to these distributors. You get kind of lost in it. And now, though, with the internet, and what I love about the crowdfunding comics is that it's very, like you said, it's very personal, and it's also a way to let the fans know. And you, Caleb, more so than anyone we've met, you're throwing your preview out there and asking the fans what they think of it. Mm-hmm. You know, and you know what I also like about what you did is that you have your comic book and you got your digital book. Mm-hmm. You don't have 50 million tiers. You know what I mean?
No, I actually started when I originally was doing like Alter Life. I had a lot more stuff, and I just felt like not enough people were buying any of it. Like they were getting like 2 or 3 backers on these random tiers, and it's just make it simple so people aren't trying to find the thing that they want, because it just gets to a point where they're like, I don't know what I want. I'm just gonna go look at a different one at this point. So. If you have a good 5 things, I think that's probably good. Like if you go up above and beyond that, it just gets crazy and it gets confusing. A lot of people are still already confused about Kickstarter itself. So to ask them to sort through 20 different tiers on top of it, they're just like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, what is this? So if I just go, here is the book, or here's the digital, here's the book with a book plate, and then here's the book with like some other cool thing. I did like a Nook figure or something for the trade. Sold those figures out fast. People loved it, but there was only like 10 or 15 of them you could get, and you just make it simpler on yourself as a creator too, because the more stuff that you have to make, the more complicated that getting all those things to those people, and the more likely you're going to screw yourself on the back end with all of the extra postage and everything else that you're going to have to deal with. Just the simpler you make it on yourself to get that book into the people's hands, the better, I think. So.
Excellent advice. Excellent. Yeah. And it also shows that, it's a confidence in your own property.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
And you're like, you want to buy the book? Here's the book. Now for something out there real quick, you made figures. Now, again, we have a lot of people that come onto the show and they watch it later on and stuff, and they want to do this themselves. Where did you get your figures made, and how much did it cost? How much you sell the figures for? And where, if somebody else wants to make figures, do you have any or a website or a manufacturer?
I got nothing to help you on that. Marcelo's making them by hand.
Oh my god!
Oh wow!
Oh my god! Wow!
He casts them old, and he's doing resin figures. I think 15 max. I think was what we said, because he's got to make them himself. We made it simple. We made it something creepy and cool that could sit on a desk, and people loved it. It's got like this Neil Gaiman ghost quality to it, and I asked Marcelo, I was like, is this something that you would even want to do? Like, is this too complicated? And he's like, no, I'll try it. I wanted to try it anyway, so I'll try it out. And I was like, okay, well,
sure, why not?
just let me know how much stuff costs so I can pay you back for it. But I guess I just got lucky with my artist, because he was willing to step up and do something like that. But
that's awesome.
I mean, I also did, I guess there was one other thing I did enamel pins, and not a big seller at shows for me, but people love them on the Kickstarter. So throwing that in there as an extra tier, it was just I was an extra $5 or $10 on the tier level, and we sold so many of them on there. I'm out of the ones that we made for the last Kickstarter, but we actually gave away as a tier on this one too. And I used some funky foreign site for that. It's gg-jjs.com or something like that. It's the weirdest thing, but they make great pins. It looks like a website that was built in the 90s, but it works great. And my biggest thing, I did a lot of internet research and stuff when I was stuck in my day job for 9 years writing Alter Life. I spend a lot of time researching where I get my stuff before I get it. So it helps to have recommendations from people that I know have run Kickstarters too. But I always double check, and I always, get samples from people and make sure it's going to be quality, because I want the stuff that people spend their money on these things to be worth the money. So
yeah. That's cool. Con-goers love pins, man. I'm surprised that they're not a big seller for you at cons, because a lot of them like to represent, their creators and the things they like. You see them on their backpacks and their messenger bags and, whatever they're toting around, But I definitely, I'm actually a huge fan of the pins when it comes to the Kickstarters. I like collecting the pins.
Pins are cool. I like pins.
Pins are
too.
cool. But, we did warn you of this, and we are now at an hour and 20 minutes.
Yes.
I would love to get into some fun questions, if you don't mind. And one I haven't asked, and I always think of this after a show, but really, in your eyes, who is your biggest fan?
My biggest fan?
Your biggest fan.
I have two biggest fans. My mom is one of my biggest fans, and my wife is my biggest fan, because there's no way I would be doing this without my wife right now. Because when I started this journey on doing this comic book stuff, it was just something I wanted to do, because I was in film. I figured out that I didn't want to do film anymore, because I produced a couple indie films. I was on set for 14 hours a day, and I was like, this is not for me. So I needed another creative outlet, and my wife was like, just go for it. She took me to C2E2, and I watched people talk about making comic books, and it was her idea to drag me to the show, and I was inspired. I was like, I'm gonna go home and write some comics and see how this works. And I wrote 3 issue 1s in like a week. One of them was Alter Life, one of them was Zed, and one of them was something that I scrapped because it wasn't going to work. But yeah, I mean, and then we relocated from Chicago about a year and a half ago now, and I've been stay-at-home dad working on comic books for the past year. So I wouldn't be able to do this if she wasn't sitting there cheering me on to do it at this point. So I think she's my biggest fan, and my mom is like, she doesn't read comic books, except she reads my comic books. And she goes on Kickstarter and like backs all my stuff, and she's like embarrassingly commenting on everything that I ever post on Facebook, and it's like, but it's all because she really believes in what you're doing, so you can't really be like, oh mom, stop it.
now two things. One, if we can get a little personal, like when you're not making comics, what's your hobby? What do you like to do? What's Caleb like to do? And what's your thing?
I love reading comics. It doesn't happen that much with the 2-year-old because I'm constantly distracted by whether he's going to hit his face on the floor, but which actually happened last week. But I'm a big video game guy. I just like to kind of get lost in a crazy game, and I love. The reason I love video games is because there's stories that are told in there that could never be told in another medium, because you got like 60 hours to tell a story versus, an hour and a half to tell a movie story. So there's a lot of really cool stories that people might not be seeing anywhere else because they're this crazy long epic story in a video game. So that's probably my big vice is playing games. But that's another thing. I don't get to play them very much anymore. So it's like I've always been a movie guy and a video game guy. So those are my two big escapes outside of writing and working on comic books. So I'm a PS4 and Switch guy. I like the Switch because I can sit there and have it handheld, and if my kid wants to watch something I don't want to pay attention to, I can be playing on my system or something. But
nice.
Yeah, that's my new vice, is the Switch, because it's so easily accessible and lots of quick games to play. But I do like the big PS4 guy, because all their exclusive games God of War and Last of Us, all those big titles that actually have great stories built in them too. I'm always about the stories more than even. Sometimes I'm forgiving on gameplay in those games when it's a story that's so good that I just want to see what happens.
Oh. All right, well, let's have some fun, all right, Nile? But I gotta get prepared for that, all right?
Okay, yes.
And I'm gonna ask you a favor though. If what light do you prefer for me? Hang on.
What a showman!
Oh God!
What a showman! What a showman!
What a showman! Well, why not? Go with the subject matter. I got the cat here.
Just make sure you keep your clothes on, whatever you're doing.
Oh my God!
Well, since it's usually like from the waist up, we're lenient on pants.
Pants are optional. Is that
Pants are always optional.
Now, do we like the purple?
That's why I don't stand.
Or should I do green? Hang on.
Let's see. You know, I will say, as a new father, Caleb, I do go digital on a lot of my books because I have to sit there in the dark on a tablet reading them. So digital has come in handy, even though I do prefer a physical book. Ah, there he is.
Is that better green? Is that just
yes,
totally
I prefer the green. The green over the purple.
I'm getting, unless I should just walk away and just leave the skull in front and let this skull talk. I could just be like, doo-doo-doo-doo. No. All right. So, Nile, do you want to go and ask?
Dude, you have the ambiance. You've got the whole set for it, and I give you the honors of my question.
All right. So, Caleb, do you believe in any of the following? Do you believe in UFOs, Bigfoot, or ghosts?
I mean, I think there's reason to believe some of it. Maybe not Bigfoot, but it's I definitely think there's probably something else in the universe other than us. It's very unlikely that we're the only beings in existence. So there's probably UFOs. I don't know if they're like, Men in Black UFOs, but there's something out there, I'm sure. And ghosts, I have days where I really believe in ghosts. I mean, why else would this story have come out of me? Yeah. I have dreams about them sometimes, and there's creepy moments where you just feel like there's someone, that maybe you lost in the past that might be there watching over you. So there might be something to be said about a ghost existing.
Have you ever seen a ghost?
I have not.
So if you've never seen a ghost, what's the scariest thing to ever happen to you?
The scariest thing to ever happen to me was probably getting held at gunpoint on a train. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah. That was actually pretty terrifying. Yeah. Like they were stealing our phones on the L train in Chicago, and the guy put a gun to the back of my head. So I didn't see what was going on. So it's probably more scary for my wife than it was for me. Wow. But yeah, I was held like.
Like when was this? Like was it late at night? Was it during?
Yeah, I was late. We were coming back from like a concert or something downtown in Chicago, and we lived in Oak Park on the west side of Chicago. So it kind of goes through a little bit of a sketchy area to get back to where we were, and there was nobody on the train except us and these couple young guys. They were probably kids, honestly, and they were just, they wanted to steal some bricks that they would never be able to sell because they stole iPhones that basically got deactivated as soon as they got them. So, but yeah, that was probably the scariest thing that ever happened to me.
Wow.
I gotta turn the light back on because now I feel bad. I thought serious stuff.
Wow.
I'm just curious how something like that can happen, especially if you can't own a firearm in Chicago. But I digress. That's another thing for another day. But anyway, no, you've been fantastic, and I think, Nile, should we let our friend go so we can get back to the...
Well, he's got, as we do on every show, we end the show with a crowdfunding comics call out. And this week, Caleb has introduced me to
And stay
Man
on.
of Sin, a surreal journey through the depths of madness. So I'm going to play the video, and then, Caleb, I'll let you, take a few seconds to chat about this.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Andrew Gildy. I'm the writer and creator of Man of Sin. Man of Sin is a story that the creative team and I have been working on for over 5 years, and we're extremely excited to finally bring the complete series to you, the fans. Man of Sin is a psychological horror thriller that explores everyone's deepest fear, the loss of a loved one. Man of Sin is a 90-page graphic novel that collects the entire Man of Sin series, including the previously unreleased third and fourth issue. Kickstarter is where Man of Sin began, and we're excited to bring the complete series directly to the fans across the world. This beautiful 90-page graphic novel will look stunning on any bookshelf or coffee table. We've also collaborated with some of our favorite artists to bring you exclusive prints and variant covers. On behalf of the entire Man of Sin team, I want to thank you for your support. So please back this project and help us bring Man of Sin to life.
That's some crazy artwork.
Beautiful artwork.
Oh my God, absolutely beautiful.
Wow. Wow. The two eyes too. You know that cover with the two eyes.
Right here.
Mm-hmm.
So, Caleb, I mean, do you know the creator of this book, or is this something that you just happened to, come upon?
Oh, it's funny. I backed Andrew's. He did like an issue of this a while ago. It was probably a couple years ago at this point. And I remember backing it and getting like some cool artwork and the issue and everything from him. And it was just something that was very relatable to me because it's different kind of art style. It's that story that's like a horror, but it's grounded in this real character. And so I know I kind of gotten to know Andrew, the guy that made this book, over the years now because we became friends on Facebook and stuff. He's from Chicago, so we kind of ran in some of the same circles with the comic book stuff for a little bit while I was still there. And we talked to each other back and forth. He asked me stuff about Kickstarter all the time, and I try to share as much as I can with him. It's funny, he actually reached out to me today, asked me a couple questions about how to keep the funding coming in throughout the campaign and stuff. And he's just one of those people that seems very relatable to me, and he seems like he's in the same boat as where I was a couple of years ago. So I feel like, why not try to support him?
Yeah. This is awesome. I mean, this artwork is phenomenal.
Yeah, the image that's on the play button or whatever, the actual image of the kids Kickstarter, I got like a postcard print of that, and I had it sitting up in my office for like a couple of years, and my wife was like, "What's that from? That art is fantastic." And he failed himself because on that card there was nothing about what the book was. There was nothing about who he was. So for a while I was like, "What is that from? I don't even remember."
Yeah.
But then I looked at Andrew's stuff a little while ago, and I was like, "Oh, that's that art." So yeah, there it is again. He's on Kickstarter. Crazy enough.
He has some, Walter Ross style. He's a very talented illustrator. His Metal Shark Bro Metal Shark, was it Bro or whatever, came out, and then even Alex Weigel. I mean, I love Alex's style, and he's got that here too. That's fantastic. And then here's
Walter Ostley did some pinups and stuff for him. I've worked with. He's actually did the chapter art in Alter Life for the trade. We did like a stretch goal that you unlocked. We unlocked it right at the end. Cool chapter art pieces done by him. and he did like 1 or 2 variant covers for me too. He's
awesome.
a pretty great artist. So yeah,
he's a cool dude.
Well, now, so Caleb, it's beautiful, but getting back to you now. So what's next? What's your next crowdfunded project? What will we see next from
my next book is so different. It's going to be a kid's book. It's a board book, but it's a comic book, and it's about superhero cats. I wanted to do something I could sit down and read with my son. Yeah. None of my stuff is kid friendly. So I'm like, I need to do something that I can kind of introduce him to my world a little bit. And my goal is to kind of make that series. I'm going to do like maybe 2 or 3 of the board books themselves, but I'm actually going to make the series grow with him, so that nice. We're going to do like, eventually it'll be like an all ages comic book itself. But I just feel like that would be a fun thing to do, is kind of make it grow with him, and then other kids can have those characters to grow with too. So that's my immediate goal. And then I'm going to do some more Zed, I think, going down the line. And I have, I think next year I'm going to do it's a one-shot that's this time travel loop about a guy that simultaneously creates and destroys a time travel device.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I remember you had mentioned that story. I didn't know that was your next one, and me for making you repeat yourself about it. But bro, anytime you want to come on, seriously, right, Caleb?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Nile, this is.
Yeah, it was a good time. This is great. I know you and I have chatted a couple times briefly over Facebook in the past, year or so. So it's really great to, be able to have an actual conversation with you and get to know you a little bit. So yeah, man, whenever you want to do something, let us know if you want to promote something, or hey, if you saw something cool. Also, we're going to be doing some virtual panels with different topics. So, if it's something you're interested in, we'll send you some invites.
Yeah, talk movies.
Always
came out. We had an Avengers panel. We figured maybe Godzilla or anything you like, any particular things you like,
man.
Movie.
Feel free to always invite. I'll let you know. I like sitting down and talking about stuff, and I hope that I'm an interesting enough person to talk to.
Yes. All right, guys. So, hey, again, everyone, if you get a chance, head over to Indiegogo. It is on In Demand to purchase Nook. Caleb was very generous, gave us a digital copy that we are currently reading, and it's for our eyes only for now. So if you guys want to get a chance to check this out, please head over to Indiegogo, purchase the book. You won't regret it. So far, I'm loving it. And again, as you guys saw with some of the preview pics of some of the artwork, I mean, this is just the art and the story. Everything meshes perfectly. You won't be disappointed. Caleb, thank you again for being our guest tonight. Billy, as always, you, my friend, are the co-host of Dreams.
Oh, thank you.
And my nightmares. So,
yeah. Caleb, I look forward to seeing you in Chicago. Maybe we can have
awesome.
or something. I don't know if you're going to come with the family or if you're going to come up, by yourself or something. But let's hang out. I know how crazy shows can get, but
yeah, man.
Yeah,
sounds good.
One more time. What's the name and date of that convention for anyone out there interested in going?
It's Comic-Con Revolution Chicago, and it's June 1st and 2nd.
Yeah.
Yep.
At Rosemont Center.
Yep, at Rosemont Center.
And we'll see you guys there.
Yes.
Awesome.
And everyone, special thanks to Frank, our chat master, who keeps the links going and the chat moving. So everyone, where is Frank? Frank is in the Frank station.
Frank's got to wear green. Frank came out last time and he had a green jacket on. So I think Frank should always wear green.
He should always wear green.
Even like a Riddler mask, And you don't see his eyes, you just see his head.
Just see his eyes and mouth.
Yeah. Thank you, Caleb, so much. Great luck.
Thank you guys. Thank you so much for having me.
Incredibly talented young man. You really are.
Thanks, man. Thanks.
It's our privilege to be on.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. Everyone have a great night, and we will see you later this week. Our special guest this week, the promos will be popping up as we get these guys locked in for some awesome shows.
Yeah.
All right, everyone, have a great night. Billy, Caleb, thank you again. Everyone
Thanks,
out
guys.
in chat, you guys are awesome, and we'll see you next time.
Good night, boys.
Hey guys, thanks again for tuning into Crowdfunding Comics. We look forward to hanging out with all of our crowdfunding fans every time we go live. And don't forget to click the link below and subscribe to our channel. And there's a little bell, you may want to hit that too. This way you get all the great notifications when we go live and when we upload some awesome content. You want to follow us? Sure, go right ahead at Twitter at CrowdFundComics with an X, Instagram Crowdfunding Comics, and Facebook at Crowdfunding Comics. Till next time, crowdfunding fans, we'll see you soon.